Good on that, except we went 3 hours the other night, so.
Taneytown Comprehensive Planning Commission, please come to order. Like, Planning Commission. Sure, I was at the right meeting. Welcome everyone here this evening. I'd like to welcome Harry Means, Councilman Harry Means, to our meeting.
Thank you.
Chris, I expect to see you every night too.
I'll be here.
All right.
I have been too long into this process to give it up now.
I agree. Thank you. Would you please stand to the pledge flag?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let the records reflect the members that are here this evening. A comment about the agenda. The next meeting's May the 20th. Shouldn't that be June the 24th for the next meeting?
Yes, either maybe the 17th. Is it 17th or the 24th?
I thought it's June the 24th. Let me recheck. Right, so it is the 24th.
24th, okay.
That's the regular planning commission?
No, the regular planning commission is on the 30th, the last Monday. The
Okay.
comprehensive
Add
planning
th- add
workshop.
that. Okay.
All right. So make that change on the agenda. You
Yep.
all agree to that?
Yep.
Consensus. All right. Jim, unless you have any comments, Craig, would you want to go ahead and start off with the review of the draft plans?
Yeah, yep, we'll jump in. It's just me tonight. Emily's on vacation this week, so you're stuck with me. So I'm just going to share my screen if that's okay.
Sure.
Can everyone see that?
Yep,
Yes.
looks good.
Okay, all right, yeah, so tonight, we're gonna go over some more of the plan elements, in the document. We'll start with economic development, the historic and cultural resources element, public safety and community well-being, and then finish off with the intergovernmental coordination, element. So jumping into the economic development and downtown revitalization. Jim, I think we'll do it like we have been previously, right? We'll just kind of let, start discussion. If there's any questions on any particular elements with any, any aspects in here, we can talk about that. Talk about the goals, just jump right in with any kind of input that the commission has.
Like comments?
I was good on the first page.
The only comment I have, we use the word walkability a good bit. I just hope we start enforcing it a little more than we do.
Mean by enforcing it, but
Well,
Well,
use it.
We've let projects go by without building sidewalks
Yes.
sometimes because of whatever hardship on the property owner and things of that nature. So we haven't been as consistent as we could be. So I recognize that.
Thank you.
And there's also, when cars park on the sidewalks, it's not walkable anymore.
okay.
Good point.
Okay. And, as we're going through this too, if you have any comments on the photographs or anything, please bring that up if you think something isn't to your liking, or if we can change some things, let us know that as well.
I liked it. I walked all up and down the street and I couldn't find that sign anywhere.
The sign,
That sign there, I thought,
I can tell you where it is, I know where it is.
yeah, I made a note that said,
It's in a storage locker.
is that right?
yeah, I made a note that it was an old picture. And then I erased it because maybe I did see that up there. I don't know. Then I forgot to look tonight.
Yep.
That's the
It's what's
one
now,
going
yeah,
across
it's
the
what's now
street.
the annex.
Yeah. Yep.
Looks good.
That is a good sign.
It looks
I
good,
like
yeah.
it, Yeah.
Good. Okay, any comments on the goals?
Yeah, I do, if that's okay,
ahead.
sir. So on goal number 1, so we talk about providing access to small business resources. So I guess a lot of my questions here, we say we're going to do something or that we can do something, and I think I just want to make sure that we can actually do that. So I don't know what small business resources the town would help. If I wanted to put something in town, what would the town do? What kind of resource would they help me with?
Well, it could be helping identify maybe some grant programs that might be available to small businesses, assisting with the permitting process, if there's any permits required, helping navigate that. So it's just, providing those opportunities to make things a little bit easier, and just making people aware of what things might be out there that they're not aware of.
Chris was just pointing out that he's the newly designated economic development liaison, so on this, shall we
Move up to the
bring him
mic.
forward to the mic?
Great.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, we got room for Paul up there, too. Come on up, Paul.
Paul, might as well.
Get up here and join us.
You move up to the mic, Paul.
But yeah,
Well, if something comes,
Well,
comes to mind.
yeah, we'll bring
I think
something up.
as
for you.
Craig pointed out, though, it's connecting people, with the resources.
Right.
It may not be a city-specific thing, but we can usually point people in the right direction.
Right, and that's, that would be something that would be incumbent upon the new economic development director to do those things, to point people in that right direction, to work with the Chamber of Commerce, to work with the Main Street organization or whatever downtown business organization is out there. There's a lot of experience. And unfortunately, way too often, and we've seen it here time and again in Taneytown, where people come in and they think they can just open a store and open a business, and they don't really have an idea what a business plan is and how to do business and what it really takes to be a successful business. And there's a lot of expertise in this town that can help them out, and we do what we can to try to lead people to that help. And I think that's one of the things that we can do better at as a community and as a city government, is to be there to be more helpful to those people.
Agreed. Jim, what is flexible zoning? Explanation right across
First
goal 1.
paragraph.
First paragraph, flexible zoning.
So, that would be, having opportunities, with adaptive reuse, or just providing more opportunities outside of just a strict zoning structure, I guess. So it's just, again, providing opportunities, being more open to varying uses. So more, just again, flexible, I guess, is a good term for it. Just more opportunities within the zoning structure.
I just didn't want to mislead someone there by saying flexible zoning. Our zones are pretty well defined. So when we use the word flexible, I don't want to give somebody an opinion that they could come into an area.
And change.
But that also could apply to the planning commission as a body, to be more flexible in how the zoning reads, or what would be allowed under certain zones.
And then that would be a text amendment or something like that.
Exactly.
To add something to the zoning that's permitted.
I guess to me, it meant that, we have a Board of Appeals, right? So you can take stuff to the Board of Appeals,
But that still has to stay within the zoning.
But that does.
I'd like to
for-
hear Jim's comment on that.
So, yeah, that's, so the flexible zoning is probably a zoning administrator's worst nightmare, because, you know, those of us in the profession like to have a nice, long list, and, you know, if, you know, you can do these things, oh, you're on the list, good.
Right.
And it's easy. And we have modified the code in relatively recent times to allow other similar uses. We've added that, you know, to the list of permitted uses in a couple of the districts. That does provide a little bit of flexibility that, you know, it may not, the code may not say sporting goods store, but there's other types of retail that you could argue, well, a sporting goods store is similar to some other specialty retail that is mentioned, or, you know, the same sort of impact. So I think the pendulum has swung back and forth on this. Some of you who have been here for a while may recall that years ago, the Board of Appeals used to be able to grant special exceptions for other similar uses, and then when one was granted that council didn't like, that authority was stripped away from the Board of Appeals. And then some years later, it was put back in for the zoning administrator's discretion. So we've been back and forth on it.
Well, I like the word flexibility. I just don't like it connected to zoning.
Yeah.
So if we can do something there,
Okay.
either eliminate it altogether or do something other than the word zoning.
Flexibility? Traction.
I think maybe we talk about adaptability or something to that. And I think what we want to try and get across there is the ability to be open to new ideas and new concepts as they come up, more so than trying to, not necessarily fitting everything, all the uses into the zoning ordinance, but just being open to, like, for example, short-term rentals, right? Or, you know, an Airbnb use. That's something that has come up more in recent years that maybe wasn't anticipated in zoning codes previously. So just being open to new concepts and being able to discuss them and find out if they're appropriate or not to fit into the city's structure.
Greg, I like the word adaptable there.
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay? We'll make
Yeah,
that,
that probably is better than flexible there.
Make that
Flexible-
change then.
Flexible implies it's a little too easy
Right.
to make that change on the fly.
Yeah.
But by the same token, you know, from a economic development standpoint, it should not be an onerous process to try to get a something that's an allowed use by special exception shouldn't be a difficult process to get that through. You know, allowed by right is one thing, but allowed by special exception shouldn't, you know, if it's something that's not, you know, a permitted use, well, then that should be a tough thing to do. But if it's something that's a special exception, then that should be a much easier process.
got it. All right, I think we're good.
Like that? Yep.
We're good on that page.
Well, I think the questions or the answer is going to be similar to what Chris just said, but on goal number 3, we talk about access to training programs, and my question was, how do we do that? So I believe from your last answer, we would help point them to, you know, training that's available online, I assume. Okay.
Got a question on goal 2.
Okay.
So it says efficiently using existing infrastructure while also concentrating housing, retail, and services in a walkable area. How does that, what does that look like? What's the actual implementation of that goal look like? Because just based off of the physicality of where everything is and how it's set up.
Well, I think it's, you know, as it stated, trying to you know, look at those uses that that are more dense and rely on water and sewer services, or need access to other retail services or things of that nature, right? Locating those in an area where those services already exist, or where they're planned for, rather than locating those types of things in more remote areas where you'd have to extend those services.
The way I read it was, if you put the stuff in a walkable area, then you are efficiently using the existing.
Yeah, to me, that means, infill development in the downtown district and as we talked about last month, trying to revert some of the storefronts that have been turned into apartments back into storefronts. And that would be the reuse of the existing infrastructure, I think, that this is talking about.
Right.
Okay, I'll keep going.
Go ahead.
It'll come together.
Keep asking.
Any other questions for Craig? Go ahead.
Okay. Goal 4, any comments on goal 4? If not, okay.
One of the things, Craig, a lot of this is things that would happen through a Main Street program, but and acknowledging that we currently don't have an active one. I don't know, Jim, what the city's official position would be on putting that back in the plan, since we're not currently active with it. I don't know where you want to go with that.
Well, council passed a resolution last Monday to direct staff within 90 days to come up with the framework to reconstitute a Main Street advisory group. So we've got our marching orders.
So that then should come back in to be part of this.
Until we're finished, we're not finished, the way I look at it.
And that would be a good implementation,
Myers?
certainly, for these goals. So if that's the case, that would be the appropriate place to put that when we talk about implementation elements.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to page 40. Any comments here?
Yeah, I guess, so in the first column there, we talk about simplifying the zoning and permitting process. And I guess I wasn't sure how we do that. So I don't know if people think our process is overly complex, because the short time I've been here, it seems like the town stuff's pretty easy and the county stuff's more complex. So it's not really something that we can do to make it less complex if it's has to do with the county, I don't think. So, I mean, I'm not saying we have to change it, but just, that was a thought that came to my mind.
I think for our larger areas, I don't think there's an issue because there's a process with the county. It's our local stuff downtown that becomes an issue because we have people, clients or whatever, that come in and don't really have an idea exactly what they want or the process. I think that goes back to an educational spot where we could, I don't know if there's a checklist that you hand out to anybody that comes in and says, I want to open a drugstore downtown. Is there a checklist?
We have a, I wouldn't call it a checklist, but it's like a bullet pointed list of the steps involved in, say, going through a site plan process to, create a new business, on a new site. For somebody who's just opening a business in an existing building, which is typically what we see in the downtown, I don't believe we currently have like a handout that says, obtain your zoning certificate, work with the clerk of the circuit court to obtain your business license or your trader's license, et cetera. Usually it would be a kind of a handoff between economic development and the planning and zoning director, one way or the other, depending upon who is contacted, by the prospective business person. But yeah, I don't know that we have a handout like for that scenario.
Maybe something, Chris, that's something for your department.
Yeah,
To
and
put
I think
together
maybe the better word.
A nice flyer or something, that has some
Yeah.
pictures on and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think the better word, instead of simplify, may be clarifying zoning and permitting processes within the city in general and the downtown business in particular. That way it covers all the way around. But if, of course, if this page is dealing strictly with the downtown revitalization plan, then you may want to just leave that in there.
I'm okay with it. I guess just when I read it, the short time I've been here, I really didn't see anything that the town had that was complex.
No,
Now, we didn't talk about anything downtown yet, since I've been here, but, so it's just a question mainly for me.
I think
Yeah,
Liz-
I guess it all depends on who you ask. I think people with their first experience with any kind of permitting process, it probably is overwhelming to a degree. And somebody mentioned it, right? Really, the right way to look at this is when somebody comes in for a permit, right? They should be treated as it's a client, right? It's not a it shouldn't be it's a customer service that you're
Right.
providing to them. And if we keep that mindset, that helps. I think that helps a lot in terms of what our job is to get them through the process rather than treating it as a hurdle to get over.
Yep, okay, cool.
All right. Questions? Good.
The other question I had was about the Antrim Boulevard expansion, or is it extension?
That should be extension.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had a couple of questions in the revitalizing downtown paragraph, I guess paragraph 2.
Okay.
It talks about improving streetscape with wayfinding, lighting, facade enhancement, and pedestrian amenities. What does that look like, given the physical limitations of our pedestrian areas downtown?
So I think the Main Street program would deal with a lot of that, but it would be, identifying areas for, appropriate crosswalk treatment, benches, street lighting. We're not getting into the actual design elements in this, but those are all things that create a more attractive and makes people feel safer in those situations. So it's just a matter of creating an environment that people are comfortable and being in, and feel safe when they're in that environment.
I guess I kind of like having, rather than just having, where I kind of like having an idea of what this actually is going to look like, as opposed to nice words on the
Yeah,
paper.
we can I think we could provide some examples, like some photos of some other areas where it's been done well with a similar like streetscape cross section that you have to work with here.
One of the things that worked very well last summer, was the plants. We kind of started, there was a little bit of a to-do about hanging baskets, but when that really got rolling, and then there was more planters out on the streets, and then everybody was putting more planters out on the streets, and the city put new plants, we put all new plants and the planters out here in front of the building. And I know already it's been done by some of the local businesses up on the corner. The 4 boxes up on the corner have already been planted, and those are being maintained. The lighting, and the city manager and I have spoke several times about lighting. We could get grants to improve the lightings on the building. It's not so much the street lights, because you can see to walk the streets just fine. The buildings all look dark and not friendly. And the way to really get people, once we have things for them to do downtown, to them to come and to stay, is create a friendlier, better lit atmosphere. A lot of the buildings are very dark, and it doesn't give a very friendly appearance, and it wouldn't take a whole lot to change that. It just requires a little bit of effort and a little bit of grant money and the cooperation of the building owners.
So maybe we need to create an ordinance for maintenance of buildings or maintenance of structures downtown.
I don't think I would want to do that through an ordinance. I think I would want to try to do that through a Main Street organization and a economic development director that would work with the building owners. Provide incentives and work with, instead of, hold out carrots and not sticks.
Have that communication.
Yes, have the open that communication. I think that's one thing that we have not been good at for some time is that kind of open communication with the business owners and the property owners.
Yeah, but to that point, though, I think, yeah, some graphic examples, I think would be helpful to get that point across and kind of emphasize what we're looking for.
I was gonna say, my only other thing is, do we include the, yeah, and I listened to the arguments about the Antrim Boulevard expansion name. When everybody outside of the room is probably gonna call it the bypass. But, do we want to include that in here when conceivably, by the time we're gonna have to, it probably isn't going to exist by the time we have to do this again?
I think you have to keep it in the plan and keep it active in people, in the front of people's minds, because if you leave it off the plan, then it disappears forever.
There's not a time limit on forthcoming.
Yeah, I was gonna say, forthcoming's doing a lot of lifting in that sense.
That we have to be optimistic with this.
Right.
Right,
so,
that's right.
I'm optimistic it's gonna take 10 years.
That would be an optimistic.
Well, I'll give an example of why it should stay in, even though it may not come to fruition during the life cycle of this update. And that is the idea that basically everything we do as an entity, as a city, is supposed to be guided by this document. So we had the opportunity to acquire 4 acres of property along the route of Antrim Boulevard. Doing so was consistent with the comprehensive plan, so we were able to do it. So if it wasn't in the plan, it'd be, we wouldn't have the justification to spend that. So basically, if we want to seek some sort of grant funding or alignment with state highway or, even with the county, something needs to be in here so that it's,
Okay.
rooted in that
Works for me.
framework.
Yeah.
I just, it was just something that kind of struck me. I was like, they haven't even like started at state highways on anything for that yet, so. Okay.
Fair enough.
On that same revitalizing downtown paragraph, again, the talk of simplifying zoning and permitting processes, maybe that could be tweaked a little bit just to, and maybe it's provide more clarity or
Clarifying
something
is what
like
I
that.
suggested there.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Good.
We okay with that?
Yep. Okay, any other comments on page 40? If not, okay, and then we just have kind of, it's just kind of a placeholder map at this point, but that we're showing the downtown business district. And that's basically, that just follows the zoning boundaries of the downtown business district as it currently exists.
Craig, I have to apologize. I owed you a map of the Main Street district as defined by the state, and I did not get that to you, and I do apologize for that.
No, that's fine. So so this is what we have at this point, because that came up last month, right? We talked about what is that, what are those boundaries? So we can refine that, and once we get the other map and talk about that next month as well.
The only question I had on this is, does anybody expect questions as to why we put those businesses on and not other businesses? I mean,
Well, as Craig said, it's just kind of a
It's a
placeholder right
map.
now.
I wouldn't want to put any of those.
okay.
Yeah, we would not want to list
Okay.
specific businesses,
Right.
and then by the time it's final, there's a different
Changed, right.
business there, or a couple
Okay.
different businesses, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Ready for page 42?
Yep, page 42. So this is just kind of taking off on discussions we've had previously of what does small town charm mean. So we're, based on some of the things we've talked about before, this is putting it into words. So hopefully we've captured what we've all talked about previously.
Under number 4, did we ever get a definition for greenway?
Space.
Green space, yeah.
I
Greenway.
I think the state has a definition of that. I think I looked that up one time.
I did, but that, yeah. Jim, was that something from the state?
Well, I think, yeah, I think
Enhanced
the way
green
it's used
space?
here is the typical planning jargon, if you will, that it's in, parks and trails, linear parks. That's what greenway means to most people.
Okay,
Yeah.
Not what we were calling the bypass, yes.
that's what I wanted to find
So
out.
in this context, I think it's spot on.
Disconnect it from that word.
Okay. Yes,
I had a question on, I guess, interested in everybody's thoughts on number 3, the second bullet down. So I love trees. Do we really want trees beside our sidewalks? So eventually they break the sidewalks. Eventually, I just took a walk the day before yesterday. I had to duck underneath the trees that were out on, I mean,
and the
I like
light
the-
doesn't get down to the sidewalk
Yeah.
when they plant them under
I
the lights.
like the trees, but I mean, they do cause some problems, but.
Yeah, well, it's about selecting the right type of tree, right species of tree for these locations, right? Because so many times, enough thought wasn't given to what the appropriate tree to plant in a street setting. So, like a sycamore or a pin oak, right? Those are terrible trees for street trees, but you see those just because they, the sycamores with their root systems and like a pin oak with the low branching. So you gotta pick trees that are appropriate for the situation.
Yeah, I wrecked my bike under the sycamore tree on York Street, I don't know how many times when I was a kid, so.
Little learner?
Yeah.
I believe that the trees that were chosen by State Highway when streetscape was done, 15 years ago, were specifically chosen for that reason and purpose. Yeah, but it's, the downside, of course, is we don't have the big, broad tree canopy that a lot of towns have, but then we also don't have roots pushing up every other sidewalk block.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. So so for those issues, so I agree, picking the best tree is a good thing to do. And I guess as far as the walkability that Barry was talking about there, I mean, so we do have, cars on the sidewalks and there literally are bushes and trees that you have to duck and go around at different areas around town. And I don't,
Yeah, and that's a constant battle for code
Yeah.
enforcement, is getting people to trim back bushes and hedges and things like that so they don't encroach on the sidewalk. Just a thought on the idea of the tree-lined streets is that, the way we specify new development, we have this narrow little strip of grass between the curb and the sidewalk. I'm sure you've all seen some communities where the sidewalk is much farther removed from the street, and then there are trees planted in that kind of median between the curb and the sidewalk. So, that's something driven by design specifications here, but a shift to that, could facilitate those tree-lined streets for, newer communities if the city does grow, while still keeping the trees, not in a little tree pit where the tree's not going to thrive and where it's also not going to heave up the sidewalk because the sidewalk is, 2 feet away from the tree trunk. So, design considerations like that can really go a long way. Certainly the downside, while I think that's a very nice aesthetic, the downside is now you've got strangers walking, that much closer to your front porch or your front door on the public sidewalk. So it makes for a larger easement area and things like that, which might not be well received by homeowners. So,
everything's a balance.
but it is, it's a different design aesthetic.
Yeah. And that goes back into that context-sensitive design, and that's a defined term that we've added to the plan. And that's all that means is just consider every situation on its own, right, and make those design decisions based on the situation that we're in, public input, what the surrounding is, and not having a single standard for every situation.
Under number 1, second bullet, are there definitions for town greens and plazas? I think I figured out pocket parks are just the little guys in the middle of the subdivisions. But what are town greens and plazas in this setup?
So again, I think that's probably an opportunity to provide maybe a definition for that, just to better, because they all mean different size elements, right? A green might be of a certain square footage, right? And then a plaza is that much larger. So it's just basically it's based on size of and where it's placed. So.
I kind of think that town greens and plazas is not something that's going to apply given our current geometry here. But maybe gathering spaces like public parks and pedestrian scale green areas. And that would then allow for some, if we get the opportunity for that kind of thing, then that allows for that. But I don't think we're ever going to be in a place where we're going to have plazas. But that's an opinion. So that's.
And I was gonna say, and other than kids playing on the playgrounds, if there's playgrounds in the middle of them, do we have any information on residents using them as meeting places? Is that a thing, or?
We don't have any to monitor to see that.
Pavilions at the park get used quite a bit, do they not?
Well, certainly Memorial Park is very popular for people to get together, but
Yeah.
I think generally speaking, no.
Okay.
I think that areas where, and just anecdotally, Meads Crossing, for example, has a couple, green space areas where, they've foregone, 10 building lots to create a little, grassy area so that there's, some place for kids to play or people to assemble or whatever. But, I'm not out and about like I used to be around town, but when I am, I rarely see activity, in those green spaces.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot depends on the size, where they are, what the community makeup is. Even right near where my office is here, we have a community that has some integrated green spaces. And, the one in particular, right, you often see kids out there playing soccer and what have you, and it just because it's of a decent size that can do that. And it's very close to the home, so the parents can look out their front door and see their kids out there. So it's very dependent upon the community and what the makeup is, but it's again just providing those opportunities more so than organizing. It's more the informal activity in those areas that it provides.
As your largest areas is where the ball fields are, when the parents are meeting with, they're having their kid watch their kids play soccer and all that stuff. I mean, that's a good place for parents to get together and so that happen a lot.
Yeah.
I wonder if amenities, in that particular space, is a big factor there, because we mentioned Memorial Park. I'll often take a walk. If I do a loop from my house down to the park and back, I do like a half a mile, or a mile, depending on if I take the gravel trail or whatever. But when I go down through the park on a nice evening, I'll see people just sitting around in the, 2 or 3 people, in the pavilion sitting at a picnic table, as well as usually there's kids on the playground and stuff like that. Yep. So, if there's some place to sit and relax, I think it's more likely that the space is going to be used.
Well, that's the thing that occurred to me when you mentioned about the green spaces that, like, at Meads Crossing or whatever that have been left. If they're just plain grass, that's not very inviting, right? So what are we doing, or what are we requiring the developers to do to make those spaces more inviting and to invite that sort of use?
Put a bench.
I think that we need to be better at that. And so maybe some, leaving that kind of thing in here kind of gives that little kick to us to say, hey, we should be thinking about this in these development plans.
Be nice to get a little green open space. I know it's not city property, but it'd be nice to have a bench area. That'd be as people walk, they could sit there, 2 or 3 people could have a conversation about all the traffic going through town or whatever. But it, conversation piece.
They could
and
have
a place to-
conversations with the people on Main Street as they're sitting waiting for the light.
And that's something that can be done, and there are lots of small grants out there to do those sorts of things, and we could get with the property owner and do something that would be inexpensive and temporary in case the property owner decided they wanted to use that, or if conversely, maybe there's a grant available to purchase that piece of property from the property owner. We just don't take advantage of the options that are out there for us. And I think that keeping those things in this idea of what small town feel means, and being, more assertive about trying to accomplish this, I think it's good to leave that kind of thing in there.
I'm okay with it.
On item number 2, we do have a design standard or design guidelines. That's already a policy. So when you say protect by adopting and enforcing, I mean, we already have that. Do we want to change that wording a little bit?
And I think we may have talked in another chapter where this might have been mentioned, that we might have talked about strengthening rather than adopting.
Right.
We certainly do have design standards that are enforced throughout most of the historic district, but the triggers under which they apply are very narrow. So
Has to be a
something
permit,
needs to
right?
either,
Yeah.
right, something needs to take a building permit and either change the footprint or height of the building for the standards to kick in. So a lot of things that you see that takes away historic building fabric is not regulated at all by the standards.
Right, because if someone, if there was a retail use and somebody is taking a property and making it a retail space, there's no change of use, there's no, nothing involved from the city's standpoint in terms of interceding in what happens there. If they need a permit to put a bathroom in or whatever, we may issue a zoning certificate on that, but then that's kind of pro forma because they're reusing an existing use. So you're right that there's nothing that brings any teeth to that when it's a reuse of an existing zoning use.
But like Jim said, change the wording there to enhance. Is that what you used?
Strengthen.
Strengthen.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree. I think
Yeah.
that's a good change.
Good change.
Yeah.
That's all I had for those pages. Looks like we're good.
I'm good with it.
All right, very good. And then just some photos of some community activity. Okay, moving into the historic and cultural preservation element. Page 44. Any comments on 44, the introductory elements?
I had. We good? We're good.
All right, very good. Okay, going into the goals.
I had a note here. Maintenance of standards. I guess what I was referring back to what I mentioned earlier about maintaining what we have. I guess that's good what we have.
Okay.
Depends on what time of night when you read this.
Well, if if this is a goal, rather than saying, here's what we did, should we be saying, here's what we can do next? So maybe that's where we talk, reiterate about strengthening them maybe.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, and just, in a sense of just looking at, since it is from 2008, looking at what new, maybe any new techniques or or successful approaches might be out there since 2008 to look at.
I have a hopefully quick question.
Trying to turn my phone off.
Um, it talks in goal number 2 about expanding heritage tourism. What would that look like, and how would we, do we have any plan to compete against possibly the largest tourist attraction for heritage and historical in 60 miles right up the street?
Well, that would be something that, I mean, that's a great opportunity to leverage, right? It's not competition, it's identifying how you can leverage that huge draw and bring people to Taneytown that are there. What similar, what are the Civil War elements, for example, in Taneytown that would be an attraction to bring people from Gettysburg to Taneytown?
We do have one advantage, is they have to go through Taneytown to get to Gettysburg.
I was gonna say, that's pretty much what I was thinking, was like, it's like a,
Sort of,
okay, yep, there we are.
Yeah, but all those cars are coming through, they're potential customers.
Yes, we need a reason for them to stop.
Right.
Well, and I think, we're not going to compete with Gettysburg, but maybe we can find ways to glom on to the things that they're doing, right? They've got, obviously the first, second, and third of July are huge dates, and of course we have our big fireworks on July 4th. Well, maybe we can convince one of the local union reenactment units to come set an encampment up for a few days here instead of being up in the middle of things at Gettysburg. Maybe we can get a historical group to set up here, and where they would still be able to be part of all of the things going on there, but they could also be part of things that we're doing here. One of the things coming up is the America 250. David Bowie has brought that to our attention, and that we really should be looking to try to do something with that. And I agree, we really probably should try to figure out something that we can do to work in with that. We could, perhaps as part of the new economic development director's mission going forward is to have the town join Destination Gettysburg as a kind of an associate member, to be that way. At least we're informed and involved in the things that are going on up there.
Like Bike Week.
Yeah.
Well, we do have that group of cyclists
Yes.
that come through. Isn't there a couple hundred or something that comes through and stay at the park overnight or something?
They have already, I think.
For a number of years, we hosted like an off-road cycling competition. They haven't come to Taneytown for the last couple years. I mean, we certainly see a lot of clubs meeting at Memorial Park and then going about on their rides, in the vicinity. But I don't know of any specific event that's held here anymore.
But maybe we can reach out to those bicycling clubs and try to get them to have a sponsored event, or, become part of some other event we're doing here. That's a kind of a cross-marketing kind of thing that we can maybe get ourselves involved in.
Set up a hot dog stand in front of your place of business or something like that,
Chris,
And it's funny because we've been trying for years to break into that market, at George's on York. And it just seems to be, for whatever reason, it just seems to be a tough go to get, they're all I guess they're kind of set in the ways that they do things, and try to get them to do something new. I guess it's a little tough, but, we still work on that. We still try to, every chance we get, to encourage those people to stay at George's.
Greg, I would like to pick your brain for a sec on heritage tourism and Main Street programs. Would it be a safe thing to say that, the audience for those, there's a lot of crossover between, heritage tourism and Main Street, folks that visit Main Streets?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, yeah, I would think definitely there's a lot of commonalities there. Yeah.
Right, so the same audience that's gonna, for whom, a revitalized Main Street, is appealing is that same person that's probably gonna be going to historical events or, that type of a thing. So the people who are interested in Gettysburg may also be the same people that like to, park the car in an old historic downtown and wander around and shop and grab something to eat. So, certainly we could try to capitalize on, some of that traffic. As you said, every car that goes through is a potential customer.
And every bicycle. And that's, I think there was some talk a couple years ago about providing some bicycle infrastructure, the bike racks with the tire pumps and the toolkits and stuff. And I think that needs to be revisited.
And we do have a couple of them, but we couldn't find a home downtown.
Yes, well,
for 'em,
and,
yeah.
right, because that also requires, yeah. We'll work on that.
For 45, page 45. All this is good, but you need to get the word out. Until we get something, a newspaper or something where people can actually see something in writing to know what's going on in a town.
I believe it starts in June.
Ah, that's great.
The newsletter, yeah.
The newsletter starts in June.
Yeah, starting in June, the city is going to be producing like a 2-page, like one sheet front and back, just a quick informational newsletter. And I think one of the other things that we're going to encourage, that I'm going to encourage, on whoever the new economic development director is to get with the folks that produce the Emmitsburg Times and the other small papers in the area. And if they don't, and at least bring an edition here, and maybe we do some advertising, but distribute it here, because right now that's not getting distributed. So if that paper were here and being distributed, and we were given the opportunity to use that as a podium, as a forum to put information out there, I think that would
How's this newsletter going out? Is that going out?
It's
to all
going
the
out
residents?
mailed the first time to everybody in 21787, and then after that, there's going to be instructions to opt in for mail. Otherwise, it'll be available electronically.
Is there opportunity for community organizations to advertise events in that paper?
I don't see why not.
I'm sure a calendar is part of that.
Yeah.
So, but that's just the local Taneytown. So places like Middleburg, Kemar, Detour, they will not get this newsletter.
Right.
Well, if it's online, right?
If it's online, they can, and they can have it emailed to them. That's part of the.
All right.
The point what you said, you can get Emmitsburg paper down at the post office, and you can also get the Thermont paper out the grocery store.
Right.
Kenny's, yeah.
So but it's limited in its
Yes,
distribution
yes.
here because it's only available in those couple of spots.
Yes, that's true.
So the idea would be that, that perhaps Main Street, would buy a certain number of ads or a certain amount of advertising, in order to facilitate distribution in town instead of just a handful of them at the post office and down at Kenny's.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing, those two places, or you get that paper, people don't realize it's available.
Yeah.
You know, I'll get it, pass it around, and where'd you get that? Didn't know you can get it. Go to Emmitsburg to get it?
You've done that to me a couple of times, Paul, where you picked up the Emmitsburg
No,
paper.
You
Here,
go to the
see
post
this?
office and it's not, I don't know how many they put there, but every time I've been to the post office, it's empty.
You gotta get there early, because they do
They
disappear.
do, it doesn't, but it's amazing.
Be there on the first. Gotta be there on the first.
All right.
Paul was just saying that he only puts out about 30 to 50 copies. So, and once they're gone, they're gone.
Yeah.
So, again, and that's something that can be worked on, but that's not for the discussion here, except to say that it should be part of our,
Right.
as a goal.
That person's
Yeah.
gonna be, is gonna be.
Okay,
busy.
Craig,
Well,
let's,
is the intent for the Taneytown newsletter to be distributed to these other surrounding towns as well? Is it going to be placed in their post offices or stores as well?
Depends upon expansion at this point, because we're kind of starting with what we can do right now, and we cannot birth a fully formed newspaper from our heads.
Well, it's a start.
Yeah,
It's
right.
a start.
This is doing what you
What's
can
good.
where you are with what you have. But you have to we have to get,
Yep, have to start somewhere.
have to start.
So let's keep on topic here.
Yes,
Is
sorry.
that okay for page 45?
Okay,
Okay.
good. All right,
46.
46.
6.
So as I read the second paragraph there, I read rhythm in new constructions. And I don't know what it means to promote rhythm.
That's typically the setbacks of buildings relative to the street and the spacing in between them.
In building
Okay.
height. Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, yeah.
I got you.
Not an engineering term, is it? And that's
No,
perfect.
no,
And that's
that's
purpose.
an art term,
Yeah.
not engineering.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else for 46?
Yeah, hold on. I'm sorry, I'm just catching up on my notes here. Again, I think it's similar to what we talked about. So we said by expanding, this is the third paragraph, by expanding heritage tourism initiatives. And so, do we have initiatives now that we have?
Should that
or-
be creating heritage tourism initiatives?
Well, that would be okay with me then. Yeah, I was just wanted to
Creating
know
and
what they were.
expanding?
Yeah,
Let's go with creating and expanding.
yeah, that's
Craig.
good with that.
How about developing?
Fourth paragraph, again, we talk about the historic structures. I'm sorry.
Yeah. How about developing instead of creating?
Yeah.
Yes,
Develop.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Jim.
like that.
Jim.
That's all right. Trying to catch both ways.
I was looking yeah. In the fourth paragraph, we talk about the reuse or adaptive reuse of historic structures, and we're gonna provide assistance, blah, 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 for grants and stuff like that. So is there a list of historic structures? What makes a structure historic? And, if Chris is historic and mine's not, how come he gets help and I don't get help? And, so I guess I'm okay with helping, but
Yeah.
I don't really wanna.
Frankly, anything this side of the railroad tracks is historic. I would, in my mind.
Is there a date that makes it historic, or is it an event that happened in the building that makes it historic?
So it could be any of the, but typically it starts at, if you use like the federal definitions, right? Typically it starts at 50 years, right? It has to be building would have to be at least 50 years or older.
Yeah,
And
that's 1970, Craig. That's
that's-
not reaching
that's-
back real far.
Yeah, the
Right,
house I
yeah.
grew up in is definitely historic.
So, yeah, some of us already made that.
But then it goes, and from there it goes on whether it's, if the structure's on the national register or is eligible for national register. And then there might be other more locally defined things, maybe certain events, like you mentioned, maybe happened there. So I believe right now you do have a list of historic properties, and we would start with that. That's, that it's interesting you bring up the 50 years because, that, 50 years ago, 50 years was old, but now 50 years later, it's not 50 years ago isn't that old.
Right.
So, but, so you got to start
As every
somewhere.
generation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Jim, is that something that would come out of the booms tracker?
I don't know if we'll be able to incorporate if it's a contributing structure or not. Certainly it would be noted, I would think if it's within the National Register District or a specifically identified historic structure, but I don't know. I haven't located a definitive list of contributing structures within the district.
I mean, if it is 80 years or whatever the number is, because I just wouldn't want one house downtown that gets assistance and that one right beside it doesn't get assistance. Yeah, so that's,
So, yeah,
One house burned down 49 years ago, and they're,
yeah. So,
So, yeah, within the National Register District, which is pretty much the, the core downtown, and then out East Baltimore Street to Roth, and let's see, actually, I guess it ends at Merwin Drive. And buildings within that area, if they are largely intact and, are at least 50 years old, or were at the time that the Register District was created or nominated, most of the properties are contributing structures within that National Register District. So anything that's still largely the form that it was when it was built is going to be a contributing structure in the historic district. So the vast majority of, between where Merwin Drive ends on East Baltimore Street and out to, trying to think of it, I think it goes all the way down to Memorial Park on the west side of town, and up and down York and Frederick a little bit too. So basically the older portion of the city, the pre-World War II portion, I guess, is
I would
largely the
actually say
historic
most of those
district.
structures are in the 75-year-old range, because that would put them back to 1950.
yeah,
So
at least that old, yeah.
so they're at least that old. Probably the bulk of them are over 100 years old.
And as you travel east and also a little bit, west of downtown, you can kind of see how the building styles evolved, that you've got some, more Victorian sort of stuff closer to the downtown. And then as you go out, the turn of the century stuff, the four square homes and, things like that were popular in the early 20th century up to the 20s. You'll see more of those, as you get a little farther out. And then you see kind of some bungalow shapes on the West Baltimore Street that were, more 40s, 50s. So, it's interesting. You can kind of see the evolution of the architectural style as you travel through the district.
I'm good with that, thank you. The only other question I had on this page, I don't know if it pertains to this, but I guess we talk about the downtown district and the historical district, so I don't know if they're one and the same yet, so I guess when we get that map, we'll find out.
Yeah, and again, I apologize for not getting that map out, but, like I said, you've got 3 different sets of boundaries, because you've got the Downtown Historic District zoning map, which is the map that Craig included here, which is different from the Historic District map, which is different from the Main Street map. So they're all slightly different. I'm not sure that we'll ever get the whole lot of them to conform, and I'm not sure that we really even want to. But I think that there's some adjustments, especially to the Main Street map, and we can talk about that,
Yeah, I think it'd be
elsewhere,
okay
but
if they were
yeah.
different, as long as you can say they're different because. I think
Yeah, they all have different purposes, right?
Yep, I'm good.
Is that 46? Good.
Yep.
Oops. Okay, again, it's a placeholder for the historic, this would be the historic district map in this location here.
So just the yellow,
Yeah,
not the dotted line, that's the
Right.
growth area, but the shaded yellow within that.
yeah. So we'll create we'll zoom in on that area. And I didn't know if some of these farms that are identified on the outer portions of the city were important to identify or not, but like I said, we'll create a zoomed in version of this map and then identify some of those historic structures within the district. Okay. Moving on to 48. This is the public safety and community well-being section.
I don't have a comment here, but I just got a thought. So we talk about maintaining emergency services here, but one thing that just recently happened with the fire company is we send out for a solicitation and we got a note back that says, you guys are paid by the county now, why do I need to give you any money? So, I mean, the fact is, the majority of us are volunteer services here as opposed to a paid. And I don't know if it fits in here or not. I'm just,
As a side note, that's an educational thing because, people think
Yeah.
that because the county is stepping into, and it still is a hybrid system, so we still
Right, right.
rely on the volunteers, and people need to understand that that's still a big part of it.
Not
But
to put the
anyway.
department on the hot seat here or anything, but I'm wondering if that's a typical response or if people overall are as generous as they normally have been with the fundraising efforts for the department
I
or the
think it's
company.
been, I'd say it's been consistent.
I think
don't
generally the
remember a
community's
letter-
been very supportive of, of the company, but
Yeah, this is the first time I remember a letter actually
Yeah.
coming back and saying that, so. But we are gonna try to, educate better.
Yeah, have they considered a paid staff or at least paid drivers for the department?
It's still Taneytown Volunteer Fire Company. We're still a volunteer fire company. Anything related should stay with volunteer fire company.
Okay. Okay, anything more in 48? Okay, moving to page 49, under the goals section.
Yep, no issues.
Okay, we're good on the goals there?
Good.
Okay. All right, then page 50, the plan section. Any comments there?
The only question I had on there is the very first sentence, we talk about safety and community well-being plan. So when I see that, I think there's like a written document somewhere. So I don't know if there is, or am I just reading it wrong, or?
Other than this would be the document, this is it, this element of it. So there are no other documents.
Okay.
That deal with this, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I think I'm okay with that. That's just the way, when I read it, I was like, oh, is that written somewhere? So.
I have a question, because I'm kind of naive about this. ADA, that's a federal type program. And they talk about sidewalks and ramps and paving and stuff. If this commission here would be looking at a drawing and miss a ramp or a sidewalk, are we liable, or is the town? What kind of responsibility do we have for overlooking that or missing it or whatever?
So my experience has been that, yeah, you could be liable. Someone could take up a case against the municipality for failing to provide accessible elements, whether it be a sidewalk or a restroom or something of that nature. So, yes, so, ensuring compliance with those standards are very important.
I think your paragraph is pretty clear what you meant. The way I understood
Yeah,
it.
I was good with everything.
there is a component of the review at Carroll County for our site development plans and subdivisions and even, building code reviews that look specifically at ADA aspects. So, but there's a lot of detail in there, so yes, something could
Yes.
get missed, but again,
I think we've
that,
seen drawings here where ADA wasn't completely followed already, where it was missed because there's a lot, like you say, there's a lot of detail.
Yes.
And I was just wondering what our liability in that situation is.
right.
Tiffany, do you have any comments? Feel free to jump right in there.
Thank you. Just on that one, I want to reiterate what Jim said. Yes, permits does go through that and will not approve a site plan for permitting without those ADA compliant regulations being met. So yes, it could get missed, but that is specific to permits and engineering on some levels as well. So we do have two departments that will not approve site plans for development if not meeting those ADA requirements.
I can give you an example. Our gazebo, when we went to pull our building permit, we didn't have an accessible path to it. So it was supposed to be just this gazebo out, on a very ever so slight little rise of the grass around it. And that wouldn't get approved until we had a hard surface path connecting it, because it was a new structure. And because it was a new structure, it needed an accessible route to get to it. So we couldn't do a gazebo just in the middle, surrounded by grass. So it is looked at, so.
Good.
Yeah.
Explains the semi-random pavement path in the middle of the park there.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then in addition to being on the plans, those elements are also inspected to make sure that they're installed correctly. And you can put a sidewalk on the plan, but if it doesn't have the right cross slope and the right running slope, then it's not compliant, so.
Rid of that.
Okay. No other comments then on page?
So on that top picture, can't we get one from Evapco? Aren't we getting a walk that has the lights and solar powered out there?
That'd be
Yes,
nice. That would be nice once that's in.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because Emily actually mentioned that to me. She said, they're not gonna like that picture with that urban
Yeah,
setting
what's
up there. Yeah, so,
We just put new crosswalks in at Roberts Mill, did we not? Or are we in the process of that? With the rapid flashing beacon signs?
We do not have any rapid flashing beacons
Yet.
yet. So I don't know if we'll
Maybe
have them in
if that's
time
in
for.
before this
Right.
goes to press, maybe we can get that picture in. I just would like to make sure that we blow up the picture of Officer Darcy being dunked into the dunk tank to a very, very large size to accommodate Officer Darcy, for one thing. But I just would like to make sure that that gets publicized. You'll get me later.
Hey, page 52.
Nothing.
okay. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, 53.
Nothing here.
Okay, yeah, these are pretty self-explanatory, I think. Okay,
54.
I'm good with 54 too.
Okay.
Comments, 54?
Okay. All right. That's all, that completes everything that I wanted to talk about tonight.
We're all anxious to wait on hearing how you made out with our key person interviews.
Yeah, so we sent out all the invites a few weeks ago, and we got 3 responses back currently. So I have 2 of those scheduled for next week, but we're going to send those invites out again to some of the others that we didn't hear from, the most of them. And we also need a good contact for Antrim as well. So if anybody has a good contact number there.
I'll get you that.
Okay. Okay.
Richard Mallett.
The general manager is fairly new down there.
Richard.
Yeah.
Now,
I think if you can get them,
Or his wife.
if you can catch them when they're not on the island, but
They go by my house a couple times a week.
okay.
Wait a minute.
I can ask Richard. I'll ask him.
yeah. So
All right.
interesting note. Actually, he's my ex-brother-in-law now, but my ex-brother-in-law used to be a GM at Antrim.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that was, I mean, I've stayed there a couple times and had, participated in some of their dinners, which were fantastic. I don't know if they still do that or not, but that was very nice. But Yeah, so hopefully, I don't know if we'll have all the interviews completed for next month, but hopefully we'll have the lion's share taken care of by then.
Questions,
Yeah, so-
comments?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. So, I like the fact that we have the goals, so we have the big mission statement, then we got a little bit more specific goals, but to me, it's still really a high-level guide. So I was just curious as to how do we get more specific? Is that part of this document in the end, or is this document, are we as specific as we're going to get in this document?
Well, the implementation elements will be more specific in terms of taking these high-level aspects that we're talking about, and then drilling down to, okay, how do we implement that at the local level?
So that'll be part of this document eventually?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Right, so like following each of the, like intergovernmental coordination plan, then there will be like a bullet pointed, set of concrete steps we can take.
Correct, right.
Yeah,
And, I mean, one thing that's been great, and it, kudos to the commission, is the dialogue has been fantastic, really. I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, you can tell that this group is very committed to the city, and there's a lot of good ideas, and, the discussion's really been very valuable to us, for sure.
So when we get into the more detailed section there, I guess at that point, we'll start using some of the information we learned from the survey, because we didn't really use that information for anything
Correct.
yet.
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah, yep.
okay, thank you.
Any comments? Paul, you good?
Okay.
Okay,
But it's hard. I was just going to comment, the county has very professional, so this relates to Section 1, economic development for the most part. I was going to just notate that the county has a lot of professional resources for new businesses, startup, like 101. City doesn't necessarily have to have that early
Point them in a direction.
point them in the direction, but the county does have all those resources.
Talking about county or
County.
Carroll Community College? County.
Both, actually. There are some resources at the county level, and then, of course, there is the Small Business Development Center at the college.
College, yeah.
And the Miller Center. So, and those are great resources. I think, is the Miller Center still doing their, they were doing programs here at the library?
They just wrapped up that entrepreneur series a couple weeks ago.
Benefit is it takes the burden off the municipalities of getting, really
Get a little
totally
closer to your
green-
mic, please.
Totally
Thank you.
green, if you know what I mean, because it can just drag you down. All right. What was the other thing? I don't know if it was mentioned somewhere in the documents. I think it's important to emphasize that the city is business-friendly, is a business-friendly municipality. Somehow, some way, that kind of slant, even if it really isn't at times. I don't know if that was covered somewhere.
That was brought up a couple years ago. Some type of something that we did here as the commission or something. Jim, do you recall about not necessarily user-friendly, but business-friendly or something? Remember? Barry, you went back in your
I was before me.
I remember it.
I mean, certainly.
It was a discussion, and yes, that is something that we tried to do something for.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we strive to be business-friendly. We often end up shooting ourselves in the foot by short-circuiting processes or doing things out of order, and then things don't play out like they always should. And a lot of those are done, under the guise of trying to be business-friendly, to help out. You know, usually it's a smaller project than like the big ones. The big ones usually can play by the rules and do everything you want them to do. But
And I think
yeah, I
that-
mean, we're very sensitive to the criticisms, but
I think part of the problem is that our answer to that has been kind of ad hoc and not, organized and planned away.
Well, we can follow the rules and still be business friendly, so, I think Paul's suggestion is that maybe that's a phrase that we want to use somewhere in this
Yeah.
document.
It's really PR more
Yes.
than anything, so.
yeah.
Friendly, not a good place to locate a business.
I think when we do receive the criticism about being, our process is being onerous or something like that, it's usually about the development process and all the code requirements that are there, or building code. I do hear a lot of comments about the cost of setting up a new business in a space, because of building code requirements. And of course, people don't differentiate, building code from development process. They really are two different things. But yeah, certainly.
And we take a lot of
can
heat
try
for
to
things
spin
the
that.
county does also.
Well, I mean, the city has adopted the county's building code, so it is our code. So, we shouldn't be looking at ways to circumvent it. We should be, the county is our partner with this. They enforce that for us, just like they enforce forest conservation or, landscaping or grading. So, we shouldn't be putting them in a situation where we are, trying to circumvent their routines either. So it is a challenge to follow all the rules and still keep a project moving and keep costs low for somebody.
I'm not saying I disagree with Jim. I agree with Jim 100%, because you got to go by the rules, you got to go by the code. As far as a PR standpoint, and for a document like that, you want to certainly give the
Appearance.
sense that we want to be business friendly at least. The only other thing I was going to comment, so they may not exist, but I was going to suggest where you can use updated images as visuals in the document. Not images of the museum or businesses before the pandemic, or people who aren't even around anymore. Use more contemporary pictures if you can. I know some of the nicer images that we have that exist for the city. That's all. That was all I was going to say.
So I
I
didn't
think
hear-
this image right here is what we really need to put out there.
I'd like to establish a place where this sign becomes, useful again.
That picture is hanging across the street. The town owns that building, so it could hang right there.
All right,
That was all.
all right, thanks, Paul. All right, anyone? Tiffany, anything else on your end?
Is it appropriate for me to make a couple maybe technical comments and ask a question about something about the document?
Yeah, please, I kind of lost you there at the end, but I think,
Oh, okay, I'm gonna sit a little closer. For next to the goals, the little blurb that's next to each goal, what is the intent of those? Just trying to understand exactly what context those are for this.
It's more just to provide clarity and to further define what that goal statement is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then for the small town feel, and the placement looks like it's under the economic development chapter or element, but it's also mentioned in other places of the document. So just wondering about the placement of that being in that particular element.
So only to the extent, because it's economic development and downtown revitalization. So, the focus, I mean, to this point has really been, building up the core downtown area is critical to the plan coming together, right? There needs that.
Right, I'm sorry. No, I meant that like historical and cultural preservation mentions small town development or small town feel,
Right.
but the definition of small town feel is in another element.
Yeah, I guess,
Yeah.
I guess, that's kind of a theme that's throughout the plan the small town charm. And that came out of the survey to a great extent too. So I guess, uh, I'm not sure. I mean, if there's a better place for it, we can certainly move it there.
Well, I think the first time we mentioned the small town feel was right at the very beginning. So maybe that page just gets put in right after the,
I'm wondering if,
vision.
like, if there's some kind of preamble perhaps where we talk about what is a small town, what makes a small town, and what gives it that small town feel, and kind of make that as the lead so that everything that we do follows along with that. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah.
doesn't
that's-
mean.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's-
kind of that is kind of the core, theme of the plan, really. And, it kind of goes along with that. We had come up with that vision statement as well. So, I guess it's a matter of just finding what is the most appropriate place for that in the document. And maybe it's not where it is currently. Yeah.
Okay.
Another one was on page 40, when it's talking about the economic development, it mentions specific programs in place right now, but then under the historical information, it says that there's a chart on page 128 of a list of programs.
Right.
Only worried, but this is a 10-year document also, so those programs might not be here within the next 10 years.
Next
Yeah.
week.
Yeah, I mean, what do you suggest, with those kind of situations? I'm not sure, because that will definitely happen. There'll be things in here, even, some of these grant programs that we'll identify are short-lived, but they are within the lifetime of the plan, but maybe won't, extend to the full life of the plan. So,
And in the one under economic development, it only names 2. But then I guess there's a longer list for historical preservation. So I don't
Right.
know, but you also reference what type of grants those are for historical preservation. And then
Yeah.
list, but then actually call out them 2 of the other ones for economic development. So I don't know if there's a longer list that could be of like current, just for, I don't know which way to go, but that seemed a little inconsistent.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, that's a good point. I'm just trying to think of the best way to, I mean, ideally, the plan is kind of a living document that can be updated over that 10-year period. And so maybe the best way to do that is maybe having a reference just a reference a list rather than put those actual programs in the document. Reference the list, and that list can be updated as it changes. That might be the best way to do it.
Something I noticed in the economic development and kind of other places was the use of can. Taneytown can do this, and Taneytown should do this. And just kind of pointing out that those are things to look out for in certain places. I'm not saying anything should change, just being cognizant that I noticed like the difference, because when Taneytown should do it and it's in this document versus something that can do. And as Jem mentioned earlier, when it's a zoning issue, it can be, it's nice to have a punch list versus that can, which are you gonna or you're not, and just.
Maybe it should be shall do this instead of can.
If it's shall, then
May
we
issue
have
and
to.
shall issue, right?
Yeah,
Right, that's,
and we have to do it, right?
right.
I don't know.
At can and if and you know,
I'd be okay with should. I don't,
should,
I
or
mean,
could. No, not could, because that leads to,
but
yeah.
Well, I think Tiffany brings up a good point, right? It's maybe both those words are appropriate. We just need to make sure they're being used in the appropriate way for whatever situation it is. Yeah.
And just
And there
the
may-
last one, I know that the word plan at the end there for the public safety and community well-being, it's just not listed on page 50 at the title. It says public safety and community well-being at the top, but it doesn't say plan at the end. So like economic development says
Oh.
plan.
Right.
So the Plan.
Yeah, yeah. on the top of 50, that should say plan at the end of that header.
Make that first paragraph actually make more sense.
Yeah,
Because it is on the other section, it's just not on that section.
right.
Thank you, that was all I had.
All righty, thank you for your input. Anyone have anything else?
Just
Jim?
thinking about the use of the word can, that after Tiffany brought that up, perhaps some of those should be will. Do we want to be more assertive or, firm on some of those? Just maybe worth a look back.
Yeah, and maybe when we get, further along to the final edits and, grammatic things.
Oh. Hey, Craig, I guess, so we went through, what, 50-some pages of this document. Can we get, all the updates and put together, either sent to us electronically or something, so that we can start reviewing it again in our spare time? Because all the stuff that we're talking about, you kind of have to read it and get the flow of it from one chapter to the next chapter.
Right, see how it relates to what you already talked about. Yeah, sure, yep.
Any other
Especially
com-
important for Harry, get Harry caught up to speed.
Yeah.
So that,
To say there's only so many of these that I can watch on YouTube.
What else are you gonna do?
what else do you?
Okay. So, anything else, our next meeting for this comprehensive plan update is June the 24th, 6:30, okay?
Okay.
Regular commission is next Monday night.
Next Monday, okay.
Yeah, this coming Monday night.
On Memorial Day?
No, that's right, we
No,
skipped that, didn't we?
right,
Skipped
we
that.
didn't have it.
We were
We
gonna
didn't-
have the
Right,
19th.
we decided to go to,
Right.
to June and skip,
So-
Mondays, this
So we're
Monday
going-
entirely.
It's July.
No, June.
June,
It'll be June.
June 30.
June 30th.
June 30th, yes. What would we do without these?
My world.
All right, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Made by Dan, seconded by Bill. Any further of those, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you, folks.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep, thank you
Thank-
for
thank
letting
you.
me,
So you're gonna be here?
I plan to still be here and be part of this. I'm not, I feel like